The morning sun painted golden streaks across Westminster Abbey as crowds gathered from every corner of the world. People had been camping outside for days, wrapped in Union Jack blankets and sharing stories of hope. The air buzzed with excitement that could be felt in every heartbeat of the massive crowd. Inside the palace, Catherine stood before an antique mirror that had reflected the faces of queens for centuries. Her hands trembled slightly as the royal dresser fastened the final pearl on her gown. The dress was a masterpiece of British craftsmanship, with delicate embroidery that told the story of the United Kingdom through tiny golden threads. Each stitch represented a county, each bead a tradition passed down through generations. The weight of the moment pressed on her shoulders more than any crown ever could. She thought about the little girl from Berkshire who once dreamed of fairy tales, never imagining she would become the central character in the most important royal story of the century. Her reflection showed not just a future queen, but a woman carrying the hopes of millions. William appeared behind her in the mirror, resplendent in his ceremonial uniform. The red and gold fabric caught the morning light, but it was his gentle smile that truly illuminated the room. He placed his hands on her shoulders, and she could feel his strength flowing into her. They had walked this journey together for over 2 decades, from university sweethearts to the couple about to reshape the monarchy. "Are you ready?" he whispered, his voice carrying the same tenderness it held on their wedding day 12 years earlier. Catherine turned to face him, her eyes sparkling with unshed tears of joy and determination. "I've been ready since the day I chose to walk beside you." The palace corridors echoed with centuries of footsteps as they made their way to the waiting carriage. Portraits of kings and queens watched from gilded frames, their painted eyes seeming to offer silent blessings to the couple who would soon join their ranks. The very walls seemed to hum with the weight of history being made. Outside, the Diamond Jubilee State Coach awaited them, its glass panels offering the people unprecedented views of their future monarchs. The coach itself was a marvel of modern engineering combined with traditional craftsmanship, equipped with air conditioning and heating while maintaining the classical elegance befitting such an occasion. As they stepped outside the palace gates, a roar erupted from the crowd that could be heard miles away. Thousands of hands waved frantically, holding phones high to capture this moment in history. Children perched on their fathers' shoulders pointed excitedly, their faces painted with Union Jacks and crowns. Elderly women dabbed their eyes with handkerchiefs, remembering other royal celebrations from their youth. The procession began slowly, deliberately, allowing everyone to drink in the spectacle. Military bands played stirring marches while the household cavalry rode alongside in perfect formation, their horses stepping in time to the music. The sound of hooves on ancient cobblestones created a rhythm that seemed to match the collective heartbeat of the nation. Catherine waved gracefully, her smile genuine and warm as she made eye contact with as many people as possible. She noticed a young girl in a wheelchair who had been lifted by her parents to see over the crowd. Catherine touched William's arm and pointed, and they both waved specifically at the child, whose face lit up with pure joy that spread to everyone around her. The route to Westminster Abbey was lined with representatives from all walks of British life. Teachers stood next to shopkeepers, doctors next to farmers, all united in this moment of national celebration. The diversity of the crowd reflected the modern Britain that William and Catherine would soon serve, a tapestry of cultures and backgrounds woven together by shared citizenship and hope. As they passed Buckingham Palace one final time as prince and princess-to-be, Catherine felt a bittersweet pang. This building had been their home base for royal duties, but after today, everything would change. The responsibilities would be greater, the scrutiny more intense, but the opportunity to serve would be unlimited. The Abbey bells began to toll in the distance, their ancient bronze voices calling across London and beyond. Through radio and television, their sound reached every continent, marking this moment for billions of viewers worldwide. In living rooms from Sydney to New York, families gathered to witness history unfold. William squeezed Catherine's hand as the Abbey came into view, its Gothic spires reaching toward heaven like prayers made of stone. The building had hosted coronations for nearly 1,000 years, its walls holding the echoes of countless "God Save the King" and "God Save the Queen" proclamations. The carriage slowed as they approached, and Catherine could see the red carpet stretching up the Abbey steps like a river of velvet. World leaders waited inside, along with representatives of every Commonwealth nation, all gathered to witness the peaceful transfer of monarchical power that had defined British stability for centuries. As they prepared to step down from the carriage, Catherine took one final deep breath of the London air as a princess, knowing that when she next breathed outside these sacred walls, she would be breathing as a queen. The heavy wooden doors of Westminster Abbey swung open with a groan that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 years. Cool air from the ancient building rushed out to meet them, carrying the scent of centuries-old stone and the lingering fragrance of thousands of prayer candles. Catherine felt goosebumps rise on her arms as she realized this threshold would mark the most important moment of her life. The first step onto the red carpet felt like stepping into destiny itself. The fabric was soft beneath her feet, but each step carried the weight of history. Behind them, the crowds continued their celebration. But ahead lay the solemn ceremony that would transform them forever. Inside the abbey, 2,000 guests rose to their feet in perfect unison. The rustling of formal attire created a whisper that traveled through the vast space like wind through autumn leaves. Catherine could see familiar faces among the crowd. Her parents, Carol and Michael, sitting with expressions of pride and wonder that made her heart swell. They had supported her through every challenge, and now they watched their daughter walk toward a crown. The abbey itself seemed alive with anticipation. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows that had witnessed the coronations of monarchs whose names were written in history books. The blues and reds and golds of the ancient glass painted rainbow patterns across the stone floor, as if heaven itself was decorating for this sacred moment. William walked beside her with the confident stride of a man who had been preparing for this role his entire life. His uniform glittered with medals and decorations, but it was his calm presence that truly commanded attention. He nodded respectfully to the Archbishop of Canterbury, who waited at the altar with the crown jewels displayed on ancient cushions. The processional music swelled around them, played by an orchestra that combined the finest musicians from across the Commonwealth. The sound filled every corner of the massive building, from the highest arches to the crypts below where kings and queens of old lay in eternal rest. Each note seemed to carry the prayers and hopes of millions. Catherine's gown trailed behind her like a river of silken dreams. The train was carried by young pages whose concentration was absolute. They understood they were part of something much bigger than themselves. The weight of the fabric reminded her with each step that she was being clothed in the expectations and hopes of an entire nation. As they progressed down the aisle, Catherine caught glimpses of world leaders who had traveled from every continent to witness this moment. Presidents and prime ministers, kings and queens from other nations, all gathered to show respect for the British monarchy and the peaceful transition of power it represented. The Archbishop smiled warmly as they approached the altar, his eyes twinkling with joy and reverence. He had officiated at their wedding, and now he would crown them as king and queen. The continuity of having the same gentle man guide both ceremonies felt like a blessing from above. Catherine took her place beside the ancient coronation chair, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain everyone in the abbey could hear it. The chair had held every monarch for over 700 years, its wooden frame worn smooth by the touch of countless royal hands. She could almost feel the presence of Queen Elizabeth II, whose grace and dignity had defined the modern monarchy. William stood tall and proud as the ceremony began with prayers that had been spoken in this same building for a millennium. The Archbishop's voice carried clearly through the abbey, his words echoing off stone walls that had heard these same sacred promises hundreds of times before. When the moment came for the actual crowning, a profound silence fell over the entire gathering. Even the traffic outside London seemed to pause as the weight of St. Edward's crown was lifted. The crown itself was magnificent, its gold surface set with precious stones that caught the light from every angle. Each gem had its own story, its own history of kings and queens who had worn this same sacred symbol. The crown touched William's head with a whisper of silk and gold, and in that instant, he became King William V. The transformation was both invisible and complete. Nothing about him changed, yet everything was different. Catherine watched with tears of joy streaming down her cheeks as her husband accepted the most serious responsibility any person could bear. Her own moment arrived with a grace that took her breath away. The queen consort's crown was lighter but no less magnificent, its diamonds and pearls representing the beauty and strength of the women who had worn it before her. As it settled onto her head, Catherine felt the presence of every queen consort in British history, their strength flowing into her like warm sunlight. The abbey erupted in celebration as the ceremony concluded. "God save the King," thundered from 2,000 voices. The sound so powerful it seemed to shake the ancient stones themselves. Musicians played with such passion that their instruments sang like heavenly choirs, and the bells of London began their joyous peal across the city. Catherine and William turned to face their people as king and queen, their hands joined, and their hearts united in purpose. The crowd in the abbey rose to their feet with applause that seemed to last forever. While outside, the celebration of millions continued with a joy that could be felt around the world. As they began their walk back down the aisle, now as crowned monarchs, Catherine felt a peace settle over her that was deeper than any emotion she had ever experienced. This was her calling, her destiny, and she was ready to serve with all her heart for all her days. The golden doors of Westminster Abbey opened to reveal a world transformed. Where they had entered as a prince and princess, they now emerged as King William V and Queen Catherine, their crowns catching the afternoon sunlight like captured stars. The roar from the crowd was deafening, a sound of pure joy that seemed to shake the very foundations of London. Catherine blinked in the brilliant sunshine, her new crown feeling surprisingly comfortable on her head, as if it had been waiting her entire life to find its proper place. The weight was noticeable but not burdensome. It felt like wearing the hopes and dreams of 68 million people, and she discovered she was strong enough to carry them all. The gold state coach awaited them, a masterpiece of craftsmanship that had carried monarchs for over 2 centuries. Its gilded surfaces gleamed like molten sunshine, and the paintings on its panels told stories of British triumph and glory. 8 magnificent gray horses stood ready, their harnesses polished to mirror brightness, their heads held high as if they too understood the importance of their role. William helped Catherine into the coach with the same gentle care he had shown her since their university days, though now his touch carried the additional reverence of a king assisting his queen. As they settled into the plush velvet seats, they both paused for a moment to absorb the magnitude of what had just occurred. The procession back to Buckingham Palace was a journey through a fairy tale come to life. Every street was lined with people whose faces shone with happiness and pride. Union Jack flags fluttered from every window like butterflies celebrating spring, while confetti fell from office buildings like snow made of rainbow colors. Children broke free from their parents' grasp to run alongside the coach, their laughter mixing with the clip-clop of the horses' hooves on ancient cobblestones. Catherine and William waved continuously, their hands moving in perfect synchronization, reaching out to touch as many hearts as possible through simple gestures of acknowledgement and love. The military escorts surrounding them created a moving tapestry of British tradition. The household cavalry rode with perfect precision, their red tunics and plumed helmets creating a river of color that flowed through London streets. Military bands played patriotic melodies that had stirred British hearts for generations, their music floating over the crowd like audible sunshine. Along the route, Catherine noticed the incredible diversity of their subjects. Londoners from every background and heritage cheered with equal enthusiasm. She saw hijab-wearing mothers lifting their daughters high, Sikh men in colorful turbans dancing with joy, elderly Caribbean grandmothers waving handkerchiefs with tears streaming down their weathered cheeks. This was the Britain they would serve, multicultural, vibrant, and united in celebration. As they passed Trafalgar Square, the crowd was so dense it looked like a sea of humanity. People had climbed Nelson's column and perched in trees, hanging banners that read, "Long live the King and Queen," in dozens of languages. Street performers juggled while walking on stilts, adding their own celebration to the royal procession. The coach paused briefly at Parliament Square, where the Prime Minister and members of both houses waited to offer their congratulations. William stood and acknowledged them with a bow that was both regal and humble. Understanding that the monarchy served at the pleasure of the people and their elected representatives, Catherine felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of love from every direction. Phone cameras flashed like thousands of tiny stars, ensuring this moment would be preserved in millions of personal archives. She realized that every person in the crowd would remember exactly where they stood on this day, what they wore, who they stood beside when they witnessed the crowning of their new monarchs. The final approach to Buckingham Palace brought tears to both their eyes. The palace itself seemed to glow in the afternoon sun, its familiar facade now representing not just a building, but their home and headquarters for decades of service ahead. The Victoria Memorial Fountain danced in the breeze, its water catching sunlight like liquid diamonds. The famous balcony where they would make their first appearance as crowned monarchs came into view, draped in red velvet and gold trim. Catherine could see palace staff arranging everything perfectly, ensuring that millions watching on television would witness a scene of perfect royal pageantry. As they approached the palace gates, Catherine reached for William's hand one final time as they shared this incredible journey. His fingers intertwined with hers, warm and steady and reassuring. Together they had walked from university students to married couple to parents to working royals, and now to king and queen. Every step had prepared them for this moment. The coach rolled through the palace gates as bands played God Save the King, with such emotion that it seemed to lift the very souls of everyone present. Palace guards stood at perfect attention, their bearskin caps and red tunics creating a wall of British tradition and honor. Inside the palace courtyard, their children waited with expressions of wonder and pride that melted their parents' hearts. Prince George stood tall in his ceremonial uniform, understanding the gravity of what had just occurred. Princess Charlotte curtsied perfectly to her parents, while Prince Louis waved enthusiastically, his innocent joy bringing smiles to everyone present. Catherine and William stepped down from the coach for the last time on this historic day, their crowns secure, their purpose clear, and their hearts full of love for the nation they would now serve as king and queen. The journey from prince and princess to monarch was complete, but their real work was just beginning. As they gathered their family around them and prepared to step onto the balcony to greet their subjects, Catherine felt a deep sense of peace and purpose settle over her. This was her destiny, and she was ready to embrace it with all the grace, dignity, and love she possessed.